Welcome to Future Economies Start with Youth. I am Kevin Estacia and I will be your host for the upcoming episodes. During this episode, we will delve into the African youth unemployment problem and offer a glance into the future of employment. With me today are Joost Verhilge, who will set the basis and delve into the major issues at hand, Nneka Onwenu from Nigeria, and Beatrice Gichohi from Kenya, who will both represent the private sector initiatives that are shaping the future of work as we speak. Welcome everyone. It is great to have you today. The challenge that we are facing today is quite enormous, and if I'm correct, Joost, it's something that is growing every single day.
Yeah, you're right, Kevin. Thank you very much. If we look at the issue at hand, I mean, often it's referred to as a problem. I don't know whether we should call it a problem. It's definitely a challenge. There are about 12 million youth basically entering the labour market in Africa alone. And if you look at the number of jobs that are being sort of facilitated for those young people, there's only about 3 million. So, I mean, that sort of gives you a bit of an idea of the magnitude of the problem. It's about sort of over 30,000 young people entering the labour market and about sort of I haven't got my maths exactly, but around 9,000 maybe that might end up with a job. So yes, there is work to be done. And this, of course, poses sort of all kinds of challenges. I mean, it has impacts on poverty levels, but also like on security and stability in countries. And clearly, if not sort of handled accurately with, it becomes a problem. But at the same time, I think we also need to be a little bit positive. I mean, it also provides opportunities for young people are extremely resilient and resourceful.
Yes.
And it's about sort of finding ways to tap into that sort of, into those young minds and hearts, basically, in terms of providing, tapping into innovation and leadership that is actually within those young people. But I'm pretty sure, I mean, some of my colleagues will tell more about this later on.
Yeah, I want to hear from you, Nneka. How is the situation in Nigeria?
Nigeria. I mean, I like the way Joost has described it and trying to look at it from an opportunity point of view as opposed to a challenge. In Nigeria, our working population is about slightly over 90 million people, and 50% of that number are the young people that fall between the ages of 18 and 35. Half of that number are currently either unemployed or underemployed. The problem is worse for women because you have 27% more women unemployed as opposed to 20% men. And the issues or the reasons for these huge numbers are many. I will maybe just touch on two. The first one is low labor demand. Right now, what you have is our economy really right now is not supporting businesses enough. And as such, businesses really are not demanding or don't have that really high demand for labor. Another thing that we see in Nigeria is the skills mismatch. You know, the education system is disconnected from the needs of employers. So even where these jobs exist, you find that a lot of young people cannot take up these jobs. And right now, I'm sure everyone is hearing about the security situation in Nigeria. There is a direct link between youth unemployment and security because it's actually young people that are perpetrating these terrorist acts. You have young people who come out, no jobs, no future, and then they're easily conscripted into some of these groups. That's the situation in Nigeria.
Okay, so I can see that youth unemployment has a snowball effect that can lead to much worse challenges. But I want to hear from you. How do you, being from Kenya yourself, how do you see that this problem relates to Kenya? Because you heard from Nneka about the situation in Kenya, in Nigeria. But how do you see this in your context?
Thank you, Kevin. I resonate very well with what Nneka is talking about Nigeria, because in Kenya, increasingly, we see that every year we graduate a bigger number of young people. And to be precise, we graduate about 900,000 young people every year. They join a labor market that is already, oversupplied. So that tells you that, we are increasing the problem each and every year. The second item is that we are increasingly creating fewer and fewer jobs in Kenya each and every year. Our economy is not able to create the number of jobs that would match the demand that there is for jobs. So that means that every year then the gap widens between the demand and the supply of jobs. And worse still is that the number of jobs created in the formal sector are less than 10% of the total number of jobs created in the country. So that tells you again that most of the jobs are being created in the informal sector. Yes. The challenge that comes with this is that, one, the jobs are not stable. The jobs are not decent, most of them. And again, they are not sustainable. So that aggravates the situation for our young people. The other scenario that I would want to highlight in Kenya is that every day you wake up and along the streets, you find women waiting, for gig jobs, They wake up and they wait for any passerby to pick them up to give them a gig job. That tells you that the level of desperation, especially when it comes to women, is very high. And no wonder, increasingly, we are seeing a lot of mental illnesses amongst the young people, and especially the women, and also a higher number of suicide cases. So that tells you that the problem is really huge in Kenya as well.
Yeah, sounds like the problem is really huge indeed. And I'm wondering, Joost, are there any initiatives being taken to tackle this problem?
I think, absolutely. I mean, again, I'm a positive person, and I like to sort of, if we look at what is happening, there are definitely loads of initiatives that are being taken to tackle this, either by working directly with youth or maybe working through civil society organizations, also through private sector. I mean, an example is an initiative I'm currently involved in myself, which is the Challenge Fund for Youth Employment. And again, we're very much trying to work with private sector partners to create, match or improve jobs for about 200,000 young people in Africa and the Middle East. It is not always easy, because it is not just, and Beatrice has already alluded to this a little bit. It's not just about the job. It's also very much about future of people. So it's and for that, it's not just a gig job. I mean, we want decent jobs. We want jobs that provide some security, some stability, a certain level of income, so that people can actually achieve some of those aspirations that they have in life. Yeah. So so it's there, but it's there's still a lot of work to be done in that sense.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it seems that youth aspirations seem to be a central point in tackling youth unemployment. We have asked two of our youth champs, Frida Okomo and Mohamed Almas, how digitalization affects their future careers. And let's take a look at their answers.
My name is Frida Okomo. I am a person passionate and committed to youth-led activities and advocacy. We are the largest generation of youth, and 60% of youth in the sub-Saharan Africa believe that technology is creating jobs. And most Kenyan youth aspire to work in digital sectors. And Kenyan youths do not only want jobs, they want decent jobs. By decent, they mean jobs that are financially secure, jobs that align with their aspiration, jobs that provide social protection and are inclusive, jobs that not only provide professional development, but also personal development. That is why I'm extremely proud to be part of the Challenge Fund for Youth Employment as a youth champion.
Hello, I am Mohamed Almas. I'm aspiring to be a public officer in my country because I want to ensure youth aspirations are streamlined in policy making and implementation processes. The impact of COVID-19 has made me more resilient. I'm actually a graduate of the University of YouTube, where I have learned marketing and digital design. The whole world is going digital, and Kenya is not an exception. So being technical savvy with digital skills and resilience will secure my future.
Yes, that was incredible to hear. And we hear a lot about digital and tech savviness. And it seems that tech and the digital sector is taking a leading spot in youth preferences in industries to work in. And how does the tech landscape look in Kenya and Nigeria? And what are some of the challenges that are helping youth to find employment in tech? So I want to start with you.
Kenya is really huge on tech. And I think you've heard from Frida and the next colleague that spoke. Most of the Kenyan youth are really tech savvy, and so we are seeing a lot of digital innovations that are coming in to offer solutions for the young people, especially the gig, what I would call the digital gig platforms. This is really huge in Kenya, and what is happening is that it's offering the young people, especially the ones that want to go into entrepreneurship, a space where they can showcase their skills, a place where they can sort of market their products. And what I find is that most of them are becoming professional, because normally the gig jobs are normally rated as very unprofessional, very unreliable, it's like an industry or a sector that has been characterized by lack of integrity. of some sort. But when you go through the digital platforms, what it gives them is an opportunity to showcase themselves, build profiles that make them really professional, create a lot of trust in the market that they have the right quality. So it's coming in, it's stepping in to ensure that these young people are able to also access wider markets than they would access before. And I find it that it's breaking the barriers when it comes to borders. Normally, as a small gig worker, you're only able to access work around your locality. But when you go digital, then there's no border. Means that you can showcase your skills across the country, even beyond the borders. And so they're able to market their products beyond. And so it helps them make a lot of incomes, increases the level of decency, so to speak, and it makes them feel a bit professional and well appreciated. So that is really coming up very well. When you talk about digital platforms also, it gives them a collective voice where they are able to access finances, because as a gig worker, I'm not able to approach the financial institution to offer me access to finance. But when we have this collective voice through, for example, Foodies app, which is one of the organizations in Kenya, we are able to talk to the bank and access finances as a collective group of young people who are doing very well. And this also talks into the issue of social benefits. They're able to approach an insurance institution, for example, and they're able to get health benefits that they could not access before. So we see that tech is really coming in strong to ensure that our young people are doing better than before.
Okay, that's really nice. And Nika, how does the tech landscape look like in Nigeria?
So in Nigeria, as you know, social media is the big rave right now. Everyone is on social media, especially our young people in Nigeria. That's influencing the kinds of jobs that they want to take up. You find a lot more young people using YouTube and digital platforms to do a lot. Bitcoin is really huge in Nigeria, and there are a lot of jobs that are coming out of all of those. So and when you speak to young people, when you engage them, you find out that those are the kind of jobs that they want. They aspire to work in jobs or take up employment that allows them to use some sort of technology. And we see several industries responding to that desire. Everyone in the agriculture sector is using technology to do a lot of stuff. We know that Nigeria is about Nollywood, and our entertainment industry is really huge. And you see that digital technology coming to play in there. And that is influencing the job creation landscape. There are a lot more jobs around those sectors that are coming up. And in response to that, we have a lot of organizations that are coming up to either train, build capacity, or match young people to those types of jobs. So that's what's going on in Nigeria at the moment.
Okay, that's very good. Right now, I want to talk about entrepreneurship. We all know that entrepreneurship is quite an important skill and quite an important topic to talk about. And I want to ask you, Joost, what are some of the challenges in stimulating entrepreneurship? And also, how can we create the necessary environments to help entrepreneurship grow?
Yeah, no, it's a really good one. And I think Beatrice already actually alluded to this a little bit as well. If you are sort of your own sort of, as a professional on your own, it is actually quite hard to get access to finance. And I think access to finance is often quoted as one of the major issues for small and growing businesses, but especially for those smaller startups. And it's interesting when you talk to young people that are trying to have an aspiration, that want to start their business. For them, it's not just about having the skills. I mean, that is, of course, all comes into play as well. But then where do you find your capital to go? The traditional banking is quite hard. At the same time, when you talk to banks, or particularly, I mean, larger investors, they're all like, yeah, sometimes it's quite hard to find these investable projects. And I think even there, I mean, we were talking about the skills mismatch. I think there is also a sort of something to be bridged here as well, whereby either through like accelerator programs or intermediate organizations that are actually helping to aggregate some of those young entrepreneurs and support them in their growth and development, but not only from a skills perspective, but definitely also linking them up with sort of the right sort of financial services providers that are actually willing to take that risk and that are willing to invest in them as well. And there are quite a number of initiatives, and again, I think we see some initiatives in other countries where we are working, where actually this is being taken on and saying like, look, we want to support those young entrepreneurs. There's a number of programs that are working on it. At the same time, not everybody is that entrepreneurial. Let's also be very honest about that. And that is also why we do see especially when it comes to young professional people coming together. I mean, working as a collective, it also builds on each other's strengths, isn't it? You have that one person who is actually quite good at sort of innovation when it comes from a technical perspective, but then you also need that other person who is probably a little bit more entrepreneurial in terms of getting the jobs and getting the gigs in for that platform. So it's probably what is the most important thing to do, I think, in this, if we want to sort of stimulate this, to probably think beyond the traditional ways of doing things.
Okay, and what do you mean with the traditional, and what do you think is the new way that we should be?
Yeah, I think especially where we often see, and I allude to this as well, the gap that you have between those beginning entrepreneurs and the investors that want to invest in. Often when investors want to invest, there is a lot of work that they feel they need to put in terms of due diligence, in terms of trying to vet the entrepreneurs they're going to work with. And as a result, they don't want to invest a couple of thousand. They want to invest large amounts of money where you can actually see that the starting enterprise is not ready for that. It needs more time. They need to grow step by step. It's not with big jumps. And I think if you then find intermediate, this is why I was talking about intermediate organizations that actually come up and position themselves along that pathway, whereby they actually help and de-risk some of the things that a traditional investor would find actually difficult to deal with. That's actually where we see some traction, and where we actually see that sort of small and growing businesses, and even like the freelancers, are benefiting from.
Okay, and Nick, I want to ask you, in Nigeria, how does the entrepreneurship, what do you think is the biggest challenges facing, and how do you think that connects to what Joost just said?
I mean, the first one, I would say, is definitely what Joost talked about, which is access to finance. Yeah. The second one, I would say, is access to markets. So we have a lot of skills development programs that train young people and gives them finance, but forget that these young businesses need to have a way to be connected to markets. And if you don't connect to markets or create an environment where they are able to connect to their clients or markets, then they will not be able to, they won't be sustainable, right? So for me, that is something that is a big a challenge that needs also to be tackled. One of the ways I see this being tackled is with a concept that I recently learned about and I find very interesting, which is dependent sort of self-employment jobs that use sort of jobs around, entrepreneurs, being linked to a platform or shared back end, and they use that to access or target their customers. A classic example is an agent banker that uses a fintech company's back end to be able to provide services to clients in communities. So I feel that those sorts of systems or tools are sort of helpful and will help young businesses or businesses owned by young people to be able to at least reach customers better or provide a better service to their customers.
Okay, I really like what you said about the problem of young entrepreneurs having access to a market, and that also connects to what Beatrice said, that digitalization also helps in that regard. But Beatrice, I want to hear about you. How do you think that digitalization in your own country can help, for example, Nigeria or any other country within Africa to start working together and start having access to different markets?
I like exactly what Neka talked about Nigeria, because I think it's happening across Africa. But what I see very interesting in Kenya is what we call peer-to-peer modeling. And what happens here is that young people are able to mentor each other. It's one thing when a young person hears, for example, youth telling them about business, but it's different when another young person tells them about their experience, what they have gone through, the challenges that they went through, and how they were able to solve them. So I find that working really very well for our young people, and we have a very interesting organization in Kenya called Shujaz that does this very well. In fact, young people feel very confident that they can learn from their peers, and it's really not like a classroom running, but it's like I'm telling you what I have gone through in the market. How did I access my licenses? Because we know that, for example, in Kenya, you have very many hurdles when it comes to starting a small business, especially for our young people. It's either the licenses, you need to talk to very, very many people in a very long line for you to be able to go through. So young people are able to share the experiences and how did I overcome this challenge. So it makes it look so easy for other young people to become entrepreneurs because they can see you made it, I can also make it. Yeah. And I think that can be shared across Africa. It doesn't have to be limited within the borders because it also happens a lot online. So that's something that we can borrow for Africa, for other countries. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, and I like what you said about the peer-to-peer, because I think as a collective, we underestimate how important it is for young people to have a role model to look up to, because a lot of the things we're going through is unprecedented, so you have no one to guide you and to look up to, and it's really important for the peer-to-peer. So I like that you mentioned that. But I want to come back to you, Joost. If you have to make a prediction on how the employment market would look, and can you even make a prediction, and how can we prepare future generations for the emerging market?
I find it really hard to make a prediction. I mean, maybe you guys can do a much better job at this than I am, but I find it quite hard. I think it's a lot of things are happening. At the same time, it's also sometimes quite hard to sort of see what lies ahead of us. I mean, even if we look at sort of, if I look at the portfolio that we're working with in the countries, there are also geopolitical things happening in many of these countries, and sometimes it's hard to predict. Then again, we sometimes also see quite unexpected changes. But one thing that is going to be quite crucial is that we actually listen to what is happening and have our eyes and ears on the ground, because a lot of it will actually have to come from young people themselves. That's also what they're telling us. It's like, okay, well, you can come up with any kind of program for us, but not do it just for us, do it with us. Because yes. I think, and this is going to be quite crucial if we want to overcome this as well. It can't just be done very top down. It needs to happen bottom up. It needs to sort of take into account what young people really want to do and where they want to go.
Yeah, definitely. And I like how you asked Nika and Beatrice. You guys are on the ground every single day in your respective countries. So if you can't even make a prediction, what do you think the emerging market would look like in a couple of years?
Like you say, I think it's sort of difficult. Yeah. I think the only thing I would say is I do see that technology is going to feature more. Yeah. We see the use of technology coming in, and not just with jobs, but even how to access jobs. We have a lot more matching platforms coming up. We have a lot more migration of skills development programs from digital classes to virtual classes. You can sit in Nigeria right now and take a class in the US. Yes. On Udemy, on so many platforms. So I think that's going to become even stronger in future. Right now, the big thing in Nigeria is the fact that you can actually get a job while sitting in Lagos and be working remotely. So I think that's another thing that's going to...
That is a big one. That is going to really grow, I think.
Yeah.
This is actually also what we see in some of the portfolio companies that we're sort of supporting. Again, I think very resourceful and innovative in terms of accessing job outside the outsourcing of activities. That is going to increasingly to happen, I think. Yeah. Totally second that. Yeah.
Okay, and I think one of the things you mentioned was also, the digitalization and how, tech skills is important. But one of the things that I thought about immediately is that how our education system is not, entirely based on letting our students learn these important skills, for example, coding or how to even use a computer. So I think that's also one of the important things that if we want to support our future generation, we have to also start by educating. And how do you see that the education system is either helping, or what do you see that it has to do different to support the upcoming generation in the new economy?
I think what I see is that increasingly we are having collaboration between academic institutions and the industry, meaning that now the curriculum is addressing real needs, giving real solutions for real needs, which is coming up very well. And I also think that we have to listen to the youth because they have a lot of solutions. They are very innovative. They don't see barriers. They don't see, we need to incorporate their voices each and every day, listen to what they want, involve them in solutions, and I think that is going to be big because they can do it. We just need to support them.
Yeah, definitely. I like how you said involving youth because as a young person myself, I always like to say that I'm an expert in being a young person. And I think it's quite important to have meaningful youth engagement. And for example, Joost, how do you think that meaningful youth engagement can help a company or an organization help build the new economy?
Yeah, I think it's difficult now to crack, because often we work with these companies. These companies are looking for growth, and it's not always the first thing that companies think about. But again, I think we are seeing an increasing number of examples whereby it becomes very important to also take into account what young people want. There's often within companies a fear to recruit people, support them, and then there is a fear of them actually going away to another job. And I think it's often at the basis of it is actually them not really feeling part of that sort of joint journey, basically moving forward. And this is where working with young people to improve basically on career planning, retention strategies, all those things, are really important elements where I think the perspectives and the voices of youth can be brought in. And there's a number of examples actually also in Africa where this is already happening, and where we see some really encouraging and positive results.
Okay, I like that. And Nika, do you see what you said? Does it resonate with your view of the thing you see every single day on the ground? Are youth, young people engaged in helping their own lives to succeed in the new economy?
Not previously, but now we see a shift right now. Young people in Nigeria are becoming more assertive. They're asking, they're speaking up, and they're asking. We also see private sector organizations now stop and start to listen, that young people have something to say and we need to take them seriously. We need to hear what they're saying, and we need to start building systems by which we can engage them. So that it wasn't something that we saw previously, but there's definitely a shift in that direction. Slow, but it's going. It's moving.
But it's there. That's really good. One thing that's clear is that the future of work will look differently. I think we can all agree on that.
Absolutely.
It will bring its unique needs and challenges that will require lots of flexibility and a strong collaboration between public, private, and also civil society. And the ecosystem of employment it only meets organizations' needs, but also meets the sensitivity from young people and also their needs and what the future holds for them. We'll touch more upon youth aspirations and engagement in upcoming episodes, so definitely stay tuned. Yeah. Thank you so much, Joost, Nneka, and Beatrice for being here today. Your expertise were surely appreciated. This was Future Economies Start With Youth, podcast by CFYE. Thank you for joining, and thank you again, Joost, Nneka, and Beatrice for being here, and see you next time.